UFO metal mystery. Material allegedly stored by the Pentagon is definitely not of this Earth, which means it is extraterrestrial. This is by John Austin of Express UK. Well, it's because of the fact that we have disclosure on this. Substances allegedly recovered from a UFO were found to be made of materials not from this Earth. It has staggeringly been claimed by a top UFO expert who told Express UK he's been assured that the material has been tested and has been found to have inexplicable properties. In December, a New York Times article revealed details of a top-secret $20 million U.S. program to study into the potential threat posed by UFOs. Well, that's not a very big amount. Now, the report claimed the Department of Defense, DoD, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AATIP, ATIP for short, even recovered unknown alloys believed to have come from a UFO that had been tested and found to have properties unknown to science. The project was run by military intelligence officials Luisa Elizondo on the 5th floor of the Pentagon's C Ring. He has revealed 2 former classified videos of suspected UFOs that were looked at, but nothing to confirm the metal actually exists. But he has given an exclusive interview to the organizers of the UFO Congress, which is the world's biggest UFO conference and took place in Phoenix, Arizona. Alejandro Rojas, host of the UFO Congress, said Mr. Elizondo had told him more about the metal during the exclusive interviews that were screened at the event. Rojas says, "I can tell you it is not an alloy like the New York Times claims. I shared at our conference that Elizondo has told me it is a metamaterial, META, a metamaterial with strange isotopic values indicating it is not from Earth. Metamaterial is a material engineered to have a property that is not found in nature. They are made from assemblies of multiple elements fashioned from composite materials such as metals or plastics, for example. No other details have so far surfaced, with some people claiming the materials were provided by UFO investigators and others believing they were received by the government." Mr. Elizondo said in the interview, "The question is, do they come from outer space or inner space or somewhere in between? I don't know. The data we have been seeing is so advanced it's hard enough for us to replicate our observations with our understanding of quantum mechanics. But for this type of technology to be available when we first started seeing it, I think is beyond improbable. I'm not going to say impossible, but I think it is really, really unlikely to come from another country like, for example, Russia or China." And it leads to the next question: if it is not ours and not theirs, then whose is it? I don't know whose it is, and that is why we're asking the questions and why we did what we did for the last 10 years and why we need to continue doing what we're doing, because we need to ask those questions and get answers. We don't know who they belong to, we don't know who they are or what they are, but we know they are real. The bulk of the money allocated by DoD for the project reportedly went via a contract to Bigelow Aerospace in Las Vegas, run by billionaire U.S. businessman Robert Bigelow, who is also working with NASA to create a new expandable spacecraft. Last May, Mr. Bigelow stunned the world by declaring during an interview with prime-time CBS current affairs show 60 Minutes, "Intelligent aliens are secretly living on Earth, and the government knows." The report claimed under the billionaire's direction buildings at the company headquarters were modified to allow the storage of materials. Now, I want to put my comment here. You'll see in a few videos before this one concerning the Nephilim and the Anunnaki and the space aliens and all that, the Genesis giants and all these beings that were really huge before the flood and not that tall after the flood, but that they're still living among us. Now, I have to tell you that the priest in our little church in St. Sozan in Capota is from Russia. And, of course, he speaks Russian. Not only Greek, but he speaks Russian. And he sees Russian programs on YouTube all the time. And he tells me that it's a confirmed fact that there are thousands of these aliens, these non-humans, they look human, but they're non-human, living in, for example, Russia alone, let alone every other country. And this really shocked me because the videos that you'll see, there were Creative Commons. I didn't steal them. They're Creative Commons, so we have authority. I have the authority to re-upload them by Stephen Ben-Nun himself. They're talking about the fact that these non-humans are living among us. And even Stephen Ben-Nun's wife, Jana, who speaks Russian, she's fluent in 5 foreign languages. She watches the Russian shows all the time, and they confirm it's a fact that these non-human entities that look human live among us. And the Russians are not keeping it secret anymore. They're talking about it very openly with facts and evidence. Whereas, of course, in the West, all this is hidden. That's my comment. If you want to go back, and those are the previous videos I uploaded today, so you'll be able to find them before this one. And I hope you do have time, even if you're just relaxing, having a cup of tea or coffee. You can just listen to them because it's a fantastic detailed update on what's going on. So going back to this now, the report claimed under the billionaire direction buildings at the company headquarters were modified in order to allow the storage of these materials. So, however, no images have surfaced of the alleged materials, nor have any details of where the objects were found, or any reports of tests carried out on them. No further details were released at the time about where they were found, how many there are, or what happened to them. I have to remember after this to make a note in my mind to upload a video having to do with Russian soldiers that were in contact with the UFO and ETs, and they were somehow zapped out of existence. I have to get that to you because I think it's a CIA document concerning that. Okay, that's a disclosure document. Okay, so no further images, no further details. It also does not appear any official report on the materials has been released. Express UK asked Mr. Rojas why there has been no release of the material or images or further details. He did not directly respond, but said, "I find Mr. Elizondo to be genuine, and although some UFO researchers feel we should be careful to trust a government insider with background in intelligence, the revelations he has shared thus far are extraordinary." Many have been skeptical of Nick Pope, who held a similar position as Mr. Elizondo in the UK Ministry of Defence, but Nick has turned out to be invaluable in legitimizing the need to investigate UFO cases, and I believe Elizondo will prove to be the same. The SETI Institute is a collective of scientists looking for evidence of alien life in the cosmos. In a radio podcast of the Big Picture Science Skeptic Check, produced at the SETI Institute, a panel of experts discussed the New York Times article and looked at the staggering claims in the New York Times article about the metal being found. Now, show host Seth Shostak said more detail should be given on the material, what exactly was done to the buildings to store the product. He said, why would the government give the material to business entrepreneur Robert Bigelow, and why not to science experts in atmospheric physics or even aviation? Look, people have been clamoring for physical evidence for decades, and if that evidence is stacked up in some buildings in Las Vegas, let's open the door. At the moment, the promise of exotic artifacts in storage is nothing more than that. Fellow host Molly Bentley said, why aren't the artifacts from unidentified aerial phenomena in his building being made available to material scientists or other researchers for study? If the evidence is not released, no one can evaluate it. and Express UK approached Mr. Bigelow through Bigelow Aerospace to try to find out what happened to the material. We have also contacted Elizondo through the Stars Academy asking if they know what became of the materials, and we await response from both. And now going to the fact concerning the material. UFO metal mystery. So why found alien craft parts allegedly held in storage by Pentagon? And this is again by John Austin, Express UK. Mysterious metal allegedly recovered from UFO and placed into top secret storage by the Pentagon was not found by the US government, as widely believed, according to new claims. Experts connected to the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence SETI Institute, based in the US, said they understood if any metal has been recovered, as suggested by recently released Department of Defense DoD documents, then the find was likely made by independent UFO investigators. A shock New York Times article revealed details of a top-secret $20 million Pentagon study on any threats posed by UFOs, which ran from 2007 to 2012. And according to the New York Times, which said it had seen DoD documents relating to the study, quote, metals unknown to science had been recovered, which had been tested and placed into private storage. It was widely believed in the UFO community that the metals must have been taken from a UFO crash scene, such as the legendary Roswell incident of 1947. But it's now been claimed that UFO believers found the material and handed it over. The bulk of the money allocated by the DoD for the project reportedly went via a contract to Bigelow Aerospace in Las Vegas, run by billionaire U.S. businessman Robert Bigelow, who is also working with NASA to create a new expandable aircraft. Last May, Bigelow stunned the world by declaring, during an interview with primetime CBS current affairs show 60 Minutes, intelligent aliens are secretly living on Earth, and the government knows. This is also what the former Defense Minister of Canada, Paul Hellyer, who is still alive, by the way, keeps telling everybody. Now, last May, Mr. Bigelow stunned the world by declaring during the interview, primetime TV, 60 Minutes, intelligent are secretly living on Earth and the government knows. The report claimed under the billionaire direction, buildings at the company headquarters were modified to allow the storage of the materials. The SETI Institute is a collective of scientists looking for evidence of alien life in the cosmos. In a radio podcast of the Big Picture Science Skeptic Check, produced at the SETI Institute, a panel of experts discussed New York Times article and looked at the staggering claims in New York Times article about the metal being found. James Oberg, a space journalist, historian, and former NASA employee, said he understood the metal had not been recovered and stored by the military or government agents, but by UFO hunters. Mr. Oberg said, the money went out of the DoD to Robert Bigelow, and he contracted the work out to some UFO groups to look for UFOs and who spent a lot of money retrofitting his building to store this material. Show host Seth Sostak said more details should be given on the material and what exactly was done to the buildings to store it. He said, why would the government give material to business entrepreneur Robert Bigelow, and why not to science experts at atmospheric physics or even aviation? And they said, look, people have been clamoring for physical evidence for decades. If that evidence is stacked up in some building in Las Vegas, let's open the doors. At the moment, the promise of exotic artifacts in storage is nothing more than that. And fellow host Molly Bentley said, why aren't the artifacts from unidentified aerial phenomena in his building being made available to material scientists or other researchers for study? If the evidence is not released, no one can evaluate it. And now going to the third leg of this article by John Austin, Express UK again. This was, again, Pentagon does have mystery metals that came from UFOs, says former government insider. The US government stored away mystery metals thought to have come from UFOs that were visiting Earth, according to former British Minister of Defense insider. In December, New York Times revealed details of a top-secret Department of Defense program investigating any threat from UFOs that ended in 2012. I wonder what's happening now. The report about DoD 20 million Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program, AATIP, also astonished claims that material that was said to be unknown to science following tests was stored in buildings modified by a private aerospace company, which was paid huge amounts of money by the DoD to research the phenomena and look after the, quote, metal alloys, unquote. The AATIP was run by military intelligence official Luis Elizondo on the 5th floor of the Pentagon's Sea Wing. And Mr. Elizondo resigned to form the UFO research group to the Stars Academy, which former Blink 182 singer Tom DeLonge belongs to. The bulk of the money went to Bigelow Aerospace in Las Vegas, run by billionaire U.S. businessman Roger Bigelow, who is also working with NASA to create a new expandable spacecraft. But no images have surfaced of the alleged material, nor have any details of where it was found or any reports of tests carried out on it. Ralph Blumenthal, one of the reporters who worked on the story, later clarified. They have, as reported in the paper, some material from these objects that is being studied so that scientists can find out what accounts for their amazing properties, this technology of these objects, whatever they are. It's some kind of compound that they don't recognize. We printed as much as we were able to verify, can't go beyond that. After a number of claims about the accuracy of the report emerged, Nick Pope, who previously investigated the potential threat posed by UFOs for the British Ministry of Defense, came forward to back the report's claim. Although his inquiries in the 1990s revealed no such threat existed and no metals were found in the UK, he's convinced mystery metal is being stored in the United States. Speaking exclusively to Express, he said, "The recent revelations about the Pentagon's UFO projects are all true. The project existed and was found to the tune of $22 million. Some of the personnel involved with the project came to believe some of the objects were extraterrestrial. Quote, there are recovered materials, the full details of which have yet to be disclosed, end quote. And we asked Mr. Pope how he could be so certain that the material existed, the metals existed and were in storage. And he said, as to how we know these alloys exist, there are 2 points. Firstly, Luis Elizondo has clearly told the New York Times and others about this aspect of the AATIP project. Secondly, the original New York Times article, December 16, states that the paper saw contracts related to the project maybe as a result of Freedom of Information Act requests, but possibly as a result of material having been passed to them by Luis Elizondo or by someone else associated with that project. The implication in the New York Times article is that the alloys were mentioned in one of these contracts, which would have had to have contained some breakdown of how the money was going to be spent. A specific expense seems to have been the modification of some Bigelow Aerospace buildings to store these alloys and other UFO-related materials. He described the New York Times fact-checking process as meticulous, and he added they were obviously very, very sure about the aspect of the story. And as I've said previously, there are various tests that can be done on alloys, and clearly these tests will have been done. The result will be known. It's just a question of whether the fact that these tests were done for AATIP but carried out by Bigelow Aerospace is sufficient to keep the results outside the scope of the U.S. Freedom of Information Act. We don't know how these alloys and other materials were obtained. We're told they relate to UFOs, and if they come from some sort of military encounter, this is potentially very significant. However, we also know that Bigelow Aerospace acquired all sorts of UFO-related material from civilian UFO research groups such as the Mutual MUFON Network, MUFON for short. Mr. Pope said, I imagine a scenario where a farmer sees a UFO over his cow pasture and later found some bits of metal in the field. He assumes, maybe wrongly, that it is connected with the sighting he gives to a UFO investigation. Subsequently, it's acquired by Bigelow Aerospace, ends up as part of the AATIP project. If this is the sort of way in which these materials became part of the AATIP project, then they might not be exotic or significant after all. Richard Shelban, a retired chemist and member of the American Chemical Society's panel of experts, is not convinced. He told Live Science, "My opinion, that's quite impossible. There are databases of all known phases of metal, including alloys. There are no alloys that are sitting in some warehouse that we cannot figure out what they are. In fact, it's pretty simple, and any reasonable good metallurgical grad student can do it for you." May Neiman, a professor in the Oregon State University Department of Chemistry, said the database includes straightforward techniques for identifying metal alloys. He said if an unknown alloy appeared, it would be relatively simple to figure out what is it made up of. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.